Well, that meeting of EU leaders on Thursday is a high-stakes one indeed. EU leaders have already agreed on a €500 billion package, but there's still much to discuss. They'll be taking over additional finance recovery plans, and the battle lines haven't moved much since the last meeting. France is siding with southern states in calling for joint debt, while northern nations like the Netherlands and Germany have barely budged in opposition. Spain, meanwhile, is calling for a €1.5 trillion recovery package to be financed by perpetual debt. It's a new proposal Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez plans to put to the group on Thursday. Well, for more on that proposal, I'm joined by the Spanish Foreign Affairs Minister Arantxa González Laya. Thanks very much for taking the time to speak with us here on Euronews. Now, the agreement between the Eurozone finance ministers was reached almost 2 weeks ago. That deal did not have any pooling of debt. These new demands by Madrid, does that not risk causing further rifts with these debt-weary northern EU countries?
Well, what we did 2 weeks ago was to agree a short-term package with 3 layers of safety nets for small businesses through the work of the European Investment Bank, for workers with a reinsurance scheme, and for governments through the ESM that would provide liquidity for governments. What we now need is the medium to long-term response to this crisis, comprised of 2 pieces, a budget and a recovery fund. And it's here that the next discussion needs to focus, because it is through this that the EU will give itself the tools that are necessary to fast recover their economy, keeping productive capacity and employment alive.
In the Senate this afternoon, you were calling for a united European Union. But do you think that at the moment the EU is united? And is there a risk that the bloc could fall apart as we know it?
Well, what we need is, in this crisis, either we all sink or we all float. Spain wants everybody to float, for sure. And this is why what we have done is do what any country that wants to help build consensus in Europe would do, put a piece of proposal on the table, a proposal that is responsible, it builds on existing mechanism, it's ambitious, because what we will have is a huge recovery ahead of us, given the damage that COVID is causing, but also a response that will give us the means that we want to keep Europe as a strong player, not only in world economy, but also in world foreign and political affairs.
But do you agree with Macron and with Prime Minister Conte that the EU is in some sort of perilous risk here unless we can show this unity?
We are at risk, of course. As I said, we all sink or we all float. I think the lucid thing to do now is to work together to find this consensus, a consensus that can bring all EU member states around the table. We all know that all our economies will suffer as a result of the COVID. We all know that the response requires a collective investment on the side of the EU. Let's do this in an ambitious manner, in a responsible manner, but also in a pragmatic manner. If we follow these 3 ingredients, we will get a solution sooner rather than later, because we need to restart the engines of our economy soon.
Minister, we're quickly running out of time, but I just want to ask you a few last questions. First of all, how do you think Spain handled its response to the pandemic?
Well, we've handled it with the best knowledge that we could and with the best intentions that we had, and with a lot of humility. We now know much more about COVID than what we knew when we started handling it. We've always followed scrupulously the recommendations we got from our health authorities in Europe, internationally, and in Spain. I am sure that when this COVID is over, we will have an opportunity to look into what we did right and what we did wrong. It's easier to look at what we did right or wrong after we know more about COVID than what we need, frankly, humbly, at the beginning of this crisis.
Yes, and there is no right or wrong answer here, but I think it is stark when you look at the difference between your country and neighbouring Portugal. I'm going to leave that topic there, but just quickly, what does Spain's recovery look like from here? When you think of your tourism market, it's been decimated by the moment. Your national bank yesterday warning that GDP will be down something like 12.4% this year. How is Spain going to get out of the current predicament it finds itself in?
What Europe, not just Spain, faces, and frankly, not just Europe, but the world faces when one looks at the figures that IMF and our central banks are putting forward, is a huge effort at recovery needed, because our GDP will diminish, will shrink like we've never seen since the Second World War. It requires cooperation, it requires solidarity, it requires responsibility, and it will require making sure that